All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is change these from a Dynamesh object to something that has subdivision levels, and we can actually start detailing quite nicely. So let's go ahead and, first of all, let's remove the radial symmetry. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the y-axis, set it back to the x, and also turn off the r. So basically now we have the radial symmetry. This is one of the reasons why I try to maintain this right in the middle so that I can use the symmetry. And let's go ahead and go to the geometry palette. Let's go to the modified topology and click on mirror and well. So that basically mirrors one side to the other side. So we have exactly the same thing on both sides, and we can, keep editing like this. And don't worry if you can sort of like see the division, you can just also smooth this out. But we're gonna get to that in just a second. All I wanna do is create a nice topology. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the ZRemesher, and we can go ahead and hold Control and click on the current state. And here's a pretty cool tip on how to project details after you have the geometry. So you can hold the Control key and set a point in your undo history. So I'm going to hold Control and click on the current state. So this yellow line, let's actually do it in here. There we go. So this white line inside the yellow history indicates that we have sort of stored this current state of the model. So now we can just go ahead and with symmetry enabled, I'm going to go ahead and turn off polygroups. We don't have any polygroups. You can if you want to. And I'm just going to set this to a target count of 10,000. So this number here is in the thousands. So this equates to 10,000 points. And I'm going to click on ZRemesher. All right, so if I turn on my polyframe, it is not too bad. This could be, improved a little bit. We can also press the Shift key and smooth this out a bit. We can also do another ZRemesher, see if we get something a bit better. But I'm not too worried about this. Like I said, this is just a quick concept anyway. So I think this is all right. And now, because we sort of stored this in, let's go ahead and subdivide this just to create more resolution. Right now we have in the active points or in this mesh 23,000. So I'm going to click on divide a couple of times, so 370,000. Let's turn this off now, the polyframes with Shift F. So this is quite nice. Let's go ahead and now go to the Project tab under the Subtool palette. There we go. So now we can go ahead and click on Project History. I don't have any color, so I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to click Project History. And there we go. ZBrush basically took what we stored in the previous point in the undo history, and it has projected that into the new model. So we now have the same sort of details we had before, and we have a nice topology with subdivision levels. So we can just go back and forth. All right, so what I'm going to do now is subdivide this a couple more times. So we have 5 million polygons. This is plenty of resolution, and we're going to start detailing this model. Now you can use standard brushes like the damn standard brush. Again, this is a brush that is quite useful in any situation, really. Actually, I'm going to increase the intensity a little bit more, just so I can push this quite a bit, and start creating those edges around, right? And I'm not going to spend too much time with this brush, just because I want to show you some other stuff. But basically, you can do the same thing that I'm going to show you with the standard brushes. But I'm going to use some of my custom brushes from the brushes pack that I have, just because that speeds up the process. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Lightbox. And in here, I have a bunch of brushes packs that I've created. So the one that I'm going to use today is the Geiger and Beksinski tribute pack. So it's this one right here, because this one has a bunch of like really weird, kind of like creepy membrane brushes that I think goes really well with this type of creature. So let me just show you a little bit of that here in the concept. So if I get closer, it's kind of like hard to see because I ended up blurring things out a little bit just to create that sort of hazy look. But all of that intricate patterns that you see around, that is created with those brushes. So let me just bring it in here. So I'm going to use this membrane, or actually let's use this one. Double click on that, increase the brush size just to show you what this does. As you can see, just in a couple of clicks, you can create something pretty creepy. So I'm going to start with something like that, just to define the outer rim of this, of the mouth of this worm, and maybe something towards the inside as well. And remember, I'm using symmetry, but you could potentially use radial symmetry as well. I'm not going to spend too much time in the inside of the mouth. You don't see any of that really. All right, something like that. I'm going to switch to another brush, which is this cool membrane as well. That is a little bit more, a bit stronger. And with this one, we can switch back to the radial symmetry just for fun. Let's enable the y-axis, radial symmetry, a radial count of 3. And that also sort of speeds up the detailing process a bit more. So before I went kind of like around that circular shape, now I'm just going kind of like perpendicular to whatever those details that I created before are. All right, I think this is looking pretty cool. And it's just a couple of brushes or a couple of strokes, and we have something that already looks pretty complex. Let's bring back the brushes again. And I'm going to try another one like this. Sometimes it's just like playing around with things and see what works. Maybe that one wasn't the best one. I want to try something like this one, the brain stuff. Yeah, I think this is good, but it's a little bit too strong. Yeah, it's a bit strong. So let's go back to, let's go ahead and use a different brush pack. So just to show you the variety that I have here with these brushes packs, and just to show you that you can use them in a bunch of different projects, not necessarily what the brush pack name says. So for example, if I open up the bark and wood brushes, which again, I created these to create wood and bark and trees and things like that, we can use something like this ash base layer and to create this really tough armor, if you will, around the skin of the worm. So I'm going to increase this radial symmetry back to 16. Remember, that's the number that I used to sort of build everything. And I'm just going to start adding these details. So again, it is a brush that was originally designed to create bark and wood, but as you can see, it can be used in a bunch of different scenarios. So that is the reason I wanted to show you these brushes. And again, you can, if you want to spend the time, you can do this with standard brushes. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do that, but just in an effort to save time and because I want to show you the entire process, this is what I generally do. All right, so now we have a pretty decent and pretty detailed worm. I'm going to also add some details here, even though you don't see much of it. It's always fun to add details. One thing that you notice is that everything is a little bit too similar around the radial symmetry. So this is another trick that when you're using radial symmetry, you can keep sculpting but varying the numbers. So I'm going to go for an odd number like 7 now, and maybe add a few more details here. So that way it sort of changes or varies the symmetry so it's not perfect. All right, so again, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I'm quite happy with how this is looking. And that's pretty much it. Once you're happy with the details, you can just go ahead and refine them manually. So I like to go ahead and, let's turn this off now, the radial symmetry. And I'm going to use a brush that also comes with the Geiger pack called the Zdzisław Beksinski Standard Strong, which is just a stronger version of the standard brush, really. And with this, I'm just going to increase the thickness of that sort of edge or that lip around the mouth. And we can turn off the symmetry now and just manually maybe increase or enhance some of these lines. Again, this is something that there's no trick really behind it. It's just a matter of spending the time and be patient. And if you enjoy this, I do really like doing this type of thing. So if you enjoy this process, this is something that, you will really waste time just doing this, or not wasted, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's not wasted if you're enjoying it, but you can spend a lot of time doing this. So just in an effort to save time, I'm not gonna do too much of that, but just so you know, this is the type of thing that I like to do. After I apply those generic details, I like to make them a bit more custom made.